we have an agenda today, a loop based on our best ideas, and we may at some point have a special guest or not. It's like really we don't know. We don't know. We have no idea actually.
Right. Okay. Welcome to the Health Tech Talk Show, where interoperability meets a budget operation with the world famous host, the capitalist queen herself, Kat McDavitt. And our Share Bear socialist, Lisa Barrett. So sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy your end of week roundup.
Well, that just doesn't
make
get,
some up.
that just doesn't get all.
It's already time for some updates to our B-roll.
Yeah, I feel like we need to just keep having new videos. But hello, America. So this episode is sponsored by like our best friends, legitimately people that we think are totally awesome, mostly Medicaid. And we have Chris here. He's going to be our special guest. He's down there in the corner. As usual, we'll send him away. Lisa and I will get ourselves in trouble, and then we will bring him on to reduce drama and pain for him. But you can see our buddies here are wearing masks. That's because we are hosting an interesting person party on Monday at HIMSS because we are the coolest thing to happen to HIMSS in many years. Sorry, HIMSS, it is true. And the HIMSS party, listen, y'all, it's black tie and you have to wear a mask. And there's all kinds of secret stuff going on. Like there's like passwords and there are like
Illuminati.
Secret questions that you have to answer. Chris
Michael,
sadly
do not tell them about the
HIMSS.
Illuminati. Do not tell them about don't talk about it.
Did he do it?
But here's the thing, Michael, I don't know if you read the email enough, but it says we are not a bunch of narcs. So you got to not say stuff.
I'm a narc, just so everyone knows. Don't tell me any secrets.
They won't even know it's you because you have a mask on. You're in disguise.
Exactly.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, clown show. You guys are going away. You're going away. Yeah. My mask is upstairs. I didn't have time to get it, so
I'm taking it off. By the way, remember how I confused people? Like I didn't recognize you because you didn't have your glasses on. Okay, everyone.
Oh, you did. Who was that? Who you confused? Seth. Seth Joseph.
Right, Seth, buddy. I am. Look. Same person, just the glasses. I only wear them for reading, so whatever.
You are your glasses. I don't know. We can see what happens. But anyway, so like as usual, y'all, a lot of things happened this week. So we're just gonna tell you about them, I guess.
A lot of things happened.
A lot of things happened. So, first, this isn't even first. I don't even know what order this is in. Just to recap everybody what's going on. There's going to be another big old riff, only it sounds like maybe this riff is going to be less about what loopholes the federal government can get away with for firing people and more about just firing people who potentially maybe should be the ones to be let go as opposed to the ones who were let go just because they were on probation. I don't know. Also, a judge last night from California, Lisa, said that it actually was illegal. OPM doesn't have authority to do anything, but stopped short of saying that we had to rescind the firings, we being the federal government, not me personally, and also stopped short of saying they had to stop firing more people. So, Lisa, what do you think about that?
I mean, listen, like if you come from the private sector, if you come from the private sector, you probably think that OPM is like the HR department of everyone. And that's like not actually true. Like every agency has its own HR. It's quite decentralized, maybe a point for improvement, but also like there's different reasons for that. So I'm sure that the judge was correct, but I mean, I don't understand like, okay, so then what? So I guess laws don't matter is kind of the summary.
I mean, that's kind of how I've been feeling. Like, Lisa, so everybody knows, I feel like all our regular fans know the talk show started because Lisa and I video chatted each other for like 400 hours every day. We continue to do that in addition to doing the talk show. But one of our chitty chats was about every time we talk to a bunch of feds, they always tell us, no, they can't do that. We're safe because XYZ executive order or there's a law. And we're like, I guess you haven't noticed it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it only matters if you believe in it. And if people all collectively, what happened there? Whoa.
I don't know. One of these guys is screwing with our settings.
I feel like one of our
Michael?
loyal team members is changing the format. So
maybe someone hacked us.
It's like, everybody has to, it's like society, right? Everyone has to believe in it and like show up in the same way and like follow the written and unwritten rules. Like, and if you don't, then I guess we see what happens. It's a little disorienting, but yeah, everything is a lot of stuff in America in particular is like very much like, okay, like, are we going to all do that? Okay.
Yep. I don't know.
We're not.
But this little memo was written in extravagant language. I would just like to read one section to you all. The American people registered their verdict on the bloated, corrupt federal bureaucracy on November 5th, 2024. Like, I mean, in case anyone is curious about, like, there's some rumors that they're gonna hit first those who are close to retirement age, which out here in the wild would be called age discrimination. Just in case anyone thought that mattered, they also fired the EEOC commissioners earlier this week. So, like, I don't know, I guess we'll see what happens there. And also, the New York Times published a pretty in-depth piece about some of the people working at Doge. There's also a really good longer form article, Lisa, that you sent me today that I just finally got through. And it turns out, friend of the show and like friend of many of us, actually, Amy Gleason is the acting director of the Department of Government Efficiency. So
I love how in this piece, how I am wearing my union shirt that says "The Weekend brought to you by unions." Amazing, really just delivering on my caricature.
I mean, these are choices that
And you're like Elizabeth Holmes or like Steve Jobs. Like what's happening?
Lisa, and then
this is like a full caricature.
This is one of our slide templates. So listen. So this Amy was on our show about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. Amy's actually a really cool person and a really good choice for this, in my personal opinion. She knows at least for us. Like, I know she has to work. Apparently, she's working across like the whole government. I don't actually know. But at least for HHS, she worked at USDS. And did some important stuff, especially during COVID. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she like understands technology. She's a startup founder. And her daughter, she's been, in the depths of the healthcare system. Her daughter, she fought very hard to have diagnosed finally with a rare disease, and like really like had some tough times in the healthcare system. So she kind of knows it inside and out. And I'm personally, I was pumped to see this come out.
Yeah, I mean, Amy, one of the biggest risks you have with this is that somebody's coming in from the outside with absolutely zero idea what they're talking about, doesn't know the agencies, doesn't know the roles, doesn't know the importance of it. You can't say that about Amy. Amy has worked for years under multiple administrations, actually, doing this work, and also has done a huge amount of work in patient advocacy. So, I mean, whether you agree or not with what's happening in the federal government, like, Amy knows what she's doing.
Yeah, no, I will second that sentiment. Like, it doesn't matter if you agree with this or not. You want people who are competent making those decisions.
That's
and
right.
Like you said, Lisa, she has been in the private sector and performed very well. And she took the risk to found a company. And she's a nurse. I forgot to say that, right? Her background is a nurse. Yeah. And she understands the government. Like, she's been there, done that. So, as opposed to a lot of the criticism you see everywhere saying we have all these young people coming in who have never really worked much in the private sector or in the government, Amy has done both.
That's not her.
So, yeah.
Well, also, like, just from a personal perspective, like, it's strange when like people that you've worked with, that that you've hung out with, are like in the news and there's a really negative media cycle. As somebody who understands the effects of that, it's pretty weird to have like somebody you worked with be like all over every major newspaper, over like late night shows, over Twitter, over like whatever. Like, she's a real person, and so it's pretty intense to have your name splashed all over the world. Obviously, she's working in the government. Like, people in the government don't deserve privacy as much as a private citizen does, right? They're working for the government. They're doing a really important job. So I'm not saying that's wrong to like publish this, but it's also just kind of crazy from a personal perspective to be like, nobody knows who this person is. everybody is talking about this person and their name is like splashed over the news. Like that's kind of weird and just sucks from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. My experience with Amy has only ever been positive. I think I've worked with her since like 2015, on and off.
Totally.
And I'm excited for her, and I think she's going to do a great job. So, yeah, go Amy. Go Amy. Drew this heart around your face for a reason. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, actually, like the photo situation here is actually totally on point. Yeah. The union, Lisa, I'll tell you.
Totally. We're just fully
whatever. But yeah, the Trump administration loves unions, apparently. What?
Not sure about that.
Yeah, some of them. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Also, in addition to all the riffing and the cutting and the fact that we don't have laws anymore, they don't matter, HHS will no longer be doing comment periods for various things like grants and contracts and other things. I think there's like some debate on how far this actually goes. I would suggest it goes far, given what we have seen so far.
I mean, this is again like the point where like so many things are just like resolutions or executive orders or like whatever decisions that were made that nobody wanted to overturn before. Like these things are not, they're not the law. They're not set in stone. They're not, you know, they're just decisions that the administration makes. You know, and so then, the next administration can just change it entirely. And so it's kind of like a bit of a like, hey, everyone, you know, like realize that a lot of the things we've been doing, we're doing them for like out of an abundance of caution, because we wanted to have more process to slow things down, right? There's all kinds of reasons, not good or bad, but like you can change it. You can just change it. I mean, you know.
Yeah. So change it.
So it goes.
In other news, it sounds like in some cases judges are saying things are illegal, though. I mean, this one example, blocking the plan to freeze federal aid. I feel like this is like repeat news, but there's probably some nuance. I didn't read the actual article because I only read headlines. Hello. But yeah, as you all saw last night too, that we just mentioned, a judge did say that a lot of these firings were illegal, but again, stop short of doing anything about it.
But what are you going to do, right? Because, you know, I think as we know, the judicial branch doesn't have an enforcement arm per se. And so they need to decide, okay, how far do they go here? What are they trying to achieve? And what's going to be the reaction if the administration says, and question mark, you know, so I just dot. So I think this is, you know, it is a complicated moment we're in right now where we see what the outcome of these federal orders are.
So in not, you know, so I will say, Lisa, I was in New York City for a few days this week doing business maxing. I had the best time because I only met with like private sector people, and all they wanted to do was talk about real business, and they did not want to talk about the federal government. It was so refreshing. I know you did not have that experience this week, but I just want to say it was really nice. In fact, one guy I met, we sat down, had champagne at one in the afternoon, by the way, which was great. And he was like, yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in DC, but let's just talk about New York and how crazy it is. Like,
That's
I
right.
just like love the whole whatever.
Listen, you know what? Loyal fans, protect your peace, right? If you need to focus on the political drama happening in your particular state and want to just stay out of then you do that. You protect your own peace.
Yeah. God bless America and our states. If you want to fight about downstate versus upstate politics in New York City, I will listen to you.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right.
Anyway, so Lisa, it looks like a lot of hospitals are using AI, but no one that's like completely off the rails. Like no one.
This has like been my big thing here is that, you know, it's all very well and good for the government to say, okay, we are writing a framework to regulate AI. We are writing a framework. Okay, we're totally still writing that framework. Remember that framework? We're still writing it. Okay, we published it on January 20th, 2025. The problem with all of that is that like for the last couple years here, like these things have been rolling out like in actual clinical practice, not just in administrative stuff. And we don't really know what's going on because we were just like waiting for the big mega ultra framework to come down from the federal government. It's like, that's not a thing. Like you can't wait that long because they're literally already using it. And like, I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm saying we don't know it. Well, we do know some bad things. We do know some bad things. We do know places where algorithms have gone wrong. And it's like, we need to have a better sense of this, and the industry needs to do it themselves because they can't wait for the government. So here we are. We're all waiting for the government. Government said, just kidding. And here we are. So that's my beef here is like, horses out of the barn.
Yeah, horses out of the barn. You know, someone suggested at our party, we have everyone answer the question to get access to the photos afterward. What does deregulation mean to you?
Ooh, nice.
Like, you know, we're not going to do that because like, but I was like,
that's right.
What does deregulation mean to me? Does it just mean like gridlock? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know.
Back from Trump 1 is hospitals are now required to post their prices again for a set of services. So from what I understand, Lisa, this was not a lot of people actually did this in Trump 1.
That's great.
So, you know, maybe.
Yeah, you know, it's the problem with like a regulation or like a law is, you know, if the big stakeholders don't want to do it, they'll find the way to do the minimum legal necessary possible. And that's really what was happening. And as far as I understand from this executive order, it's like, we're going to try to really make them do it this time. I am like excited to see like some kind of positive news about policy. Like we really believe in transparency as a core component of, you know, making America healthy again. Great. Like love to hear it. That seems like a positive message. And now the question will be like, are the players going to actually like take note and really do it and not just like fake do it? That's the real question.
Yeah, fake do it. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Faking it.
In not fake doing, it sounds like some organizations are taking the criticism on immigration pretty seriously from the Trump administration, and we got this lovely alert from Political Pro. By the way, if you can afford it, please pay for Political Pro. They are fantastic, and looks like FQHCs are now asking for proof of citizenship before you can get services. Weird.
This is one of those things again, like, does the law matter? And as noted here in the subhead, it's the law. So we're going to change the law. We're going to rewrite it. What are we going to do? Because I do think it's really important for people to get health services, and you do not want people, like case in point, measles, running around without getting things like vaccines and basic treatments if they're really sick. We do not want sick people in the streets. We do not want people to be suffering. So I get it. There are competing priorities here, but I believe everyone should have healthcare. So, you know, you knew that already though.
Yep. We have measles now. We have measles.
Measles
in Texas. Measles are coming. Apparently, this the message was saying this was because of the border not being secure. However, it looks like from some fact checking on the X, it looks like. Yeah, Lisa, tell us the real story.
Yeah, so just a reminder for folks, here's your public health moment of the week. Hopefully not just this, but you know, measles is incredibly contagious. It can stick around in a room after somebody's gone for hours. So like if you are in a pediatrician's office and a kid walks in with measles and then they leave, and then you walk in with your kid, hours later, they could still get measles from that measles in the air. And that's not great. It's incredibly contagious. In fact, this outbreak in Texas, which started in a kind of isolated Mennonite community, not related to legal or illegal migration or immigration, and spread because the surrounding community had really low levels of measles vaccination in public schools and in the community. Again, this is a disease that was identified many centuries ago. We have a super wonderful, effective vaccine that is incredibly safe, and it is now spreading. So because people travel so much, as Melissa puts up here, people travel a lot, and there are cases popping up in a bunch of other communities. Anytime that your community vaccination level goes below like 98% or something, we are at risk. If you are an adult and you had measles vaccine when you were a kid, if you want to, you can go and get a booster. It's totally fine. You'll probably be fine either way, but you can get a booster if you have like really vulnerable people or unvaccinated babies in your household. You can also get a booster. Just saying, it's really easy. Measles. We don't need it.
Measles.
People die.
Measles are back.
They
Also,
if you don't die, kids can get seriously injured from measles. They can have permanent deafness. It can affect their vision. It is not a chill and easy to get over disease. So don't play with it.
Measles is not chill, y'all.
No, it's not chill.
Also, let's take a second on this slide just to talk about fact checking. We talk a lot on this show, and I wrote what I intended to be a miniseries, but may or may not write any more, depending on how I feel, on like the news and how to react to news, since there is so much news through so many different channels. Step one, when you read something, really anything these days, is just say, how does that make me feel? Is it firing me up? Does it seem ridiculous? Does it not seem ridiculous? Just like, and then just try to fact check. Like, we got Google, y'all. We got a lot of search engines. We've got like DuckDuckGo, if you like that. Like, just check more than one source, especially if it is via X or any form of social media. It's worth checking. And that is not just about the current administration. That's kind of across the board. I think just the tone makes it a little bit more, feels a little bit more urgent, but like, this kind of thing happens across history and across years, but just keep your wits about you and do some Googling before you're like, OMG, and you go repeat that, because part of the reason these headlines do feel like that and do make you want to go, oh my God, did you see? Is because that's part of the pattern of a contagion, right? That's part of social spreading. So in communications land, not public health land, which Lisa is better at than me. So just like take a breath, y'all. Just like
take a breath.
Just think.
Take a minute.
Yeah.
Mary Sarah. Yes, I was going to say this. Mary Sarah, I also had to get vaccinated again, like when I went to grad school a decade or so ago, because for some reason they wouldn't accept my ancient old paper vaccination record from when I was a baby. And it's just honestly like the easiest to get. You can totally get the vaccine wherever you go. And I mean, kids, pregnant people, pregnant women, some young kids like aren't eligible for it yet. So like, there's a good reason to get it if you are around a pregnant woman or you have little kids who haven't gotten vaccinated yet. So think about it. Stay safe. We don't want to lose any of our 5 loyal fans to measles. Thanks.
That's right. That would be a 3% loss. That would be too much.
That would be bad.
Even more broke than we already are.
That's right.
So speaking of media stuff, right? This was a really, I thought, this Chris Deacon, who, as you can see here, I am not friends with, but I saw her post through just various other people sharing it about some accusations about BetterHelp using AI and some other criticisms with Teladoc. To be clear, I've never used BetterHelp, and I've been locked out of Teladoc since I changed insurance plans too many times, and like they will not recognize my new login. So I haven't used Teladoc in years. I can't tell you how the experience is, but this is a really interesting little LinkedIn series, which these days is just as good as the real media, as far as I'm concerned, depending on what's happening. Just talking about all the experience she's had and others have had with BetterHelp potentially using AI, allegedly. And then the interesting thing about this is not just that, not the story. That's not the story. The story for me is that in true form to big corporations these days, she has gotten just slammed with communications from Teladoc's lawyers. Which is, kind of bullshit, and good for her. She posted it again on the internet so that everybody could see it.
Well, this is interesting too, because, this is kind of like the same sort of vibes as the United Healthcare and Dr. Potter that we talked about last week, right? This idea of like, you say something, you get a massive, cease and desist, like threatening letter from the corporate attorneys for that company. That's an interesting pattern, guys. I'm not sure we, the best retired PR gals in the universe, would have advised you to do, right? I mean, I don't know. It depends, right? But I think it doesn't usually come across well. And like someone like Chris and someone like Dr. Potter, they feel like they have enough of a platform that they're going to just post that letter you sent. And then people are going to see it and say like, well, why are they being such a bully? I mean, I understand that they probably feel like, I'm assuming that Teladoc feels like they're being unfairly maligned here, but like, I don't know that this comes across that well.
Yeah, I don't think this would not be the move that I would have suggested. Now, let's be clear, like both United and Teladoc are facing a lot of pressure. Teladoc has had some financial pressure. Let's just call it pressure because I don't work for Teladoc, but and United, of course, is under a lot of pressure for a lot of different reasons, though I do not think financial. Last time I checked, but
well, I mean, I think the pressures on Medicare Advantage and the threat against Medicare Advantage is a real threat to United's, investors and shareholders. And I also think that there's a lot going on there. It's not a simple story, and United's own pressures and the fallout and the reaction and the impact on the company after the killing of their CEOs, or the United Healthcare CEO of the insurance company, not the whole group. That's a real thing. That's separate and a real thing. And there's lots of pressure on them.
Yeah, there's lots of pressure. I understand the desire to do something like this, but I do not think it's a good move. Also, in general, I think people should share their opinions and stories more often. I think that's one of the reasons people actually, our 5 fan watch us, Lisa, because we're just like, ugh. This is like one of the problems in general with media and just like social proof is people think, oh, no one else is talking about it. It must not be real. And that's how bad stuff happens more broadly. Obviously, in health tech, I'm not sure our industry totally matters in the big scheme of things, but it matters broadly. Let's even talk about Ukraine just for a second. I know we should stay on health tech stuff, but I am super upset about how Ukraine is being framed and how the portrayal of the meeting that with the administration, like that, awful, right? Awful. I think that is bullshit. And
they were attacked, just to be totally clear. They were attacked.
I'm curious to see how the rest of the American public, of which, broadly supporting Ukraine, I'm curious to see how that changes. So today, Lisa, I commissioned a painting from a Ukrainian artist. And listen, if we're not going to support them for at least, someone will be able to feed their family with some ridiculous art that I commissioned. So sunlight does disinfect. It's true, Mary Sarah. Friend of the show, Sergey here is saying same thing. Corporate bullying. It's kind of bullshit.
That's right.
But speaking of not seem to care about corporate bullying, Matthew Holt back again. This was just, I thought, an interesting snippet that he posted. I think he and several others have said, if you make it on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, like you're probably going to prison.
Do not, if you are a young person and an entrepreneur, do not accept the 30 under 30 award from Forbes. Don't do it. You're going to prison.
Don't do it. Just say prison. No, thank you. No, thank you, ma'am or sir. Nope. Okay, Lisa, you listened to an interesting podcast that I maybe listened to slightly.
Yeah. So shout out again to Vital Signs. We've shouted out on this podcast to Jacob and to Nikhil, friend of the show, Nikhil, for this podcast before. It is a relatively low budget podcast from Redpoint and from Out of Pocket. They could use some audio help, and I'm saying that from a extremely poorly produced internet talk show. So that is not like
what do you mean?
Be insulted. We're so good at audio, but like the content is great, and so like I kind of want them to get a little bit of zhuzh. So Jacob and Nikhil, maybe ask your bosses for some cash for your equipment. But other than that, really great interview with the CEO of Hinge Health. So Hinge is like now maybe like a decade old. It's like Omada and Hinge, and there's a couple others in that world who like actually have legitimate health tech businesses that have like made it through the various like funding valuation crunches and like actually done something that's useful for patients. And so Hinge Health, if you don't know, it's one of the musculoskeletal tools that's basically putting physical therapy on an app, like in people's homes with a variety of things. And it was really interesting because they talked about, so Daniel, who's the CEO, talked a lot about the business and how it's evolved and what they do. So really interesting listen. He was at times very snarky towards his competition, which I found really entertaining. So that was fun. He was calling out without saying. He was like, he was basically like, thanks to our competitors for like pushing us harder, which I thought was really funny. And he was like, we're just MSK and the other ones are not. And they're he's like employers are looking for best in class, not someone who does everything. So just some real like barbs that were really entertaining to me. And so I definitely recommend this. And also because this is one of those health tech companies that's like, at least at this point, stood the test of time. Like, I don't know the inside story, but it's interesting because we've had lots of conversations here also with VCs about sort of like the various funding cycles and like, can these businesses actually do anything? Can they live up to their valuations? And there was a lot of interesting stuff in that. At the end, though, what I really want to talk about is they said like, oh, tell the audience like what you want to see and what you're expecting. And he leveled some criticism about CPT codes. And he said, oh, the bureaucrats created these and they were well-meaning, but they don't understand that it makes it really hard to like evolve the care model to be delivered by technology, by software, by AI. And I was like, bro, CPT was not developed by bureaucrats. It was developed by the AMA, a guild, and no shade, right? Like they've built a huge, incredible business around CPT, and CPT is really important for tracking like what's actually done. But he was like pointing his like gun in the wrong place. Like that's not what CPT
and the
is.
AMA and the CPT codes, that is an episode for another day.
That's a whole other story. So I wanted to say, super interesting episode. Daniel Perez, come on our show, but like you're wrong about CPT. The end.
Boom. All right, so we are going to switch over to our special guest. We've got some primer slides while he finishes up his makeup about Medicaid. So this is Chris. He's from Mostly Medicaid. We love those guys. They're awesome. We're excited to hear their thoughts on like Medicaid in general, but also just whatever Chris wants to talk about, because like we don't care. But yeah, so it's looking like allegedly there's going to be some cuts to Medicaid. I don't see how there can't be, but there are some red lines allegedly about what can be cut and what can't be cut. But we will see. Also a nice little piece here on how much money we could save with site neutral payments. But no one wants to do that, I guess. So we're gonna bring Chris up here, and he's gonna tell us something. Well, first you should introduce yourself.
Sure, I can do that. So I'm Chris Billum. I'm partner at Mostly Medicaid. I know we advertised that Mr. Clay Farris would be here today, but unfortunately he's dealing with a sick child, and happy to pinch hit for him today. But my background primarily in behavioral health and health IT before I got into consulting, and have been doing a lot in that space ever since. But we do things all across the Medicaid space with plans, states, and solution providers who are trying to sell into those entities.
So are you guys like freaking out with all the Medicaid news?
Not as much as some. We're trying to be the voice of sanity and what is actually happening and what is actually not happening. Clay actually delivered a great session down at our conference in Florida about a couple of weeks ago. And he did a survey across a variety of different individuals, interviewed lots of people, some coming into the administration, some former Medicaid directors, some other people that are very knowledgeable, and came up with a pretty good list even several weeks ago about what was going to be on the table, what wasn't going to be on the table, what some of the messaging was going to be like, and how this was going to play out. And it's playing out pretty much the way we were told several weeks ago, that this is, yes, they're going to try and find cuts. Yes, they're going to do some things with the program. The program is going to change. Clay's predicting cuts at the federal level for the first time ever. So that may be news to people that he has a famous orange chart that shows the continued growth of the program in every administration, every period, every decade. We had continued to go up in Medicaid spending, but he is predicting that we are going to see a reduction of some portion of the Medicaid spending on the federal side. Now, see, that's part of the discussion also, is people forget this is a federal and state program, so we can do things to cut funding on the federal side that have an impact on the state side, and then the state has a decision to make. Do we step up and fund more? Do we fund less? Do we cut? What do we cut and how do we cut it? And it becomes this domino effect where the states end up making lots of different decisions based on federal match rates changing or those kinds of actions that are still on the table. So.
Well, we have lots of questions. I mean, people come to me in my actual day job with questions about, you know, how to meet particular match rates and what all the rules are. And a lot of that is just like, in my opinion, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Chris, is just the sort of the outcome of the way that this has been run from the federal government side for such a long time, with just like like a lack of clear statements about what is actually permissible, lots of interpretation, lots of different stories being told to different people, and sort of the unwillingness to put out there like these are the rules and here are the options and that's it.
Right.
It's not,
right.
I mean, to be fair, like Medicaid is complicated, states are complicated, but like there's been a real, my perception, I'd love to know your thoughts here, is that there's been a real unwillingness to put some of these things down on paper for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we've been living in waiver world for a long time. So
That's
a lot
right.
of that is, you know, waiver. What is a waiver? A waiver is waiting the actual rules. So rather than changing the rules, we've been living in this land of, well, we're going to do a waiver for this and we're going to do a waiver for that. And that's a big question about how the work requirements may get rolled out or not rolled out. Is it going to be encouraging states to do waivers? And so it's going to be the red states for the most part that step up and do that and take advantage of that waiver? Or do we make it a program change that people can put in as a state plan amendment or some other structural change to the actual program to enforce work requirements or put those in place? We've been living in waiver land for a long time, that, you know, everything's being done from the perspective of that we're waiving the normal rules and we're going to implement this that way. And that's another thing that is on the table that a lot of people aren't paying attention to, is it's never really been tested what happens when you cancel a waiver that's already been approved. That has not gone to the courts before. It's only happened once, and it was the Arkansas work requirements, and they went along with it. They agreed with it. So there's never been a waiver canceled that a state fought and wanted to keep. So do they cancel the big California waiver or a New York waiver or a North Carolina waiver that they don't agree with, and test their ability to actually do that? You know, are we allowed to cancel a waiver? And, you know, does CMS have that authority? But that's part of the danger of living in waiver land, is that we don't know how strong those waivers even are. And, you know, doing things that way may or may not be the way to actually see stability in the program. And I absolutely agree that's a struggle of getting stability in the program, is we're doing way too many things as exceptions to the rule instead of changing the rules.
Yeah, let's just really quickly say, like, why does this matter for health tech broadly? And it's because there's been a huge, like you just said, these massive waivers that have allowed all kinds of flexibility for what you can use, you know, Medicaid for in particular states, with lots of focus on data and infrastructure and interoperability and building technology, health tech, and programs on top of that, right? We've had people on this show, Kat, talking about, you know, building for Medicaid and like there's a huge amount that's gone into that in the last X number of years here, really more than a decade, I would say. And so like dramatic changes to Medicaid, of course, affect people in states and affect states, but they also affect this like entire health tech landscape.
Yeah, totally agree. I think there's a lot at risk in general. And I think, you know, our friend Kevin, we talked about him last week, his article in, at least I always want to say the other 80, but it's the 80 million. Whoops. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Outlining a lot of the different issues that other, you know, tech companies will see, and just, you know, how states are going to change in general. And then, Chris, we saw there was an article that Lisa shared with me that I only partially read. I think it was about ACF, HHS ACF canceled the New York State monies for the eligibility system they were doing. Is that what it was, Lisa? Just like,
yep.
We're not doing it anymore. And the language that I actually did read was quite critical.
Yeah, those kinds of actions we're going to see more of. I mean, it's the funding, and that's the other thing that's challenging to me to see how this plays out is, if the executive's going to choose not to spend money that's been appropriated, what does the appropriation even really mean? So we're dealing with those challenges. I mean, even the question being raised about the continuing resolution, if we're going to fund the federal government on a continuing resolution, that means you're going to vote for money for USAID that you just shut down. So there's going to be budget for an agency that no longer exists because there's that disconnect between what's happening in the executive and what's happening in the legislative right now.
Yeah, it's totally wild.
That's a really great point. I actually didn't think about that because I did read about the potential CR. So interesting.
Yeah, because everything that we've been talking about this week has been about next year's funding. It's like we haven't, in 2 weeks, we're going to run out of money for this year. But if you're just going to do it on a CR, there's money in that budget for a bunch of things that they've now decided they don't want to spend money on the executive side.
So Chris, what do you think? Like, what assuming let's assume this everything kind of passes as expected. We see pretty significant cuts in many ways to Medicaid. What do you think the first impact? What are the early term impacts that we're going to see?
I mean, the hope is that it's not going to be the things that are most directly impactful on members with the highest need. I think we're going to see some things around ACA and the expansion populations, around how much the match, and potentially that could trigger if the match rate changes in a lot of states. There's a trigger mechanism in place that they would roll back their expansions, and so that's quite possible that those trigger states may end up in a position of making the decision of whether to roll back their expansion or not. I think the expansion rates are definitely very much on the table. The general FMAP, no, but the actual expansion match rate, that 90-10 that a lot of states used as the reason to do it, but also a lot of states said, well, they may change it someday. Well, this may be the administration where we see that change, where it's no longer the Fed's picking up 90% of the cost for not healthy people, but healthier than the traditional Medicaid population. So people that are just poor, not aging, blind, or disabled, which was the traditional population for Medicaid before expansion came around.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest and number one, I think, is going to be that one.
Okay. What do you think? Going back to waivers and how waivers aren't real. Waivers aren't real. There's been whole little sub industries that have grown up around specifically California and New York, and let's use CHWs as an example, right? There's like a whole category grown up now about how do we train CHWs, how do we coordinate them, how do we push them out into communities to support various programs as part of those waiver programs. Do you think that's just assuming those waivers get pulled back, that's just dust?
We think it's possible, which is not something we would have said in the past. It's possible that this administration will at least test that. Now, will some courts say no, you can't do that? What we know is that it's not tested, and until it's tested, and until a court says, oh no, CMS doesn't have the authority to pull back a waiver once it's been approved, it's an unknown. And what we believe is that if anybody's going to take a chance on it, it's probably this administration to try and pull back a waiver, especially if they get mad at a state, for whatever reason. If there's some friction created and someone suggests that could be a way to penalize a state for an action that they take, that you get in that tit for tat, and that's one of those things that could be on the table.
That is so wild. And what an example. We talk a lot about pen stroke risk on this show. And I know I've told stories about, how my investors in the old days working at Collective would often be like, no, Kat, you can't do that because of pen stroke risk. And I'd be like, what? I'd be like, XYZ waiver or this random thing that's never going away. But clearly that is not the case, right? A lot of these companies are just going to get wiped out overnight. That's if that happens. So pretty wild.
Yeah.
So our friend Catherine here. Yeah.
Yeah. From Catherine's, I would say I cannot imagine Chris, like, let us know your thoughts here. I cannot imagine the federal government would say, you have to do this, Missouri. I can't imagine that.
Yeah, and there was the danger of Missouri being one of the few states, if not the only state, where it was done through a voter referendum, and the legislature didn't pass it. That's the danger of a voter referendum versus, a state law that was passed through the legislature. If you do it through a referendum, there's that giant question mark of what is fully funding expansion. And I'm sure they can dance around that for quite some time as to, whether they're going to fund it or not. Now, what it has done, the voter referendum has created a situation where a senator like Senator Hawley in Missouri is now saying, I can't cut Medicaid because I know the people of my state support Medicaid. So there is a double-edged sword, or lots of factors that come and play into that. But that's one of the dangers of it being a referendum, is that then the legislature gets to get in there and mess around with it and decide what they do or don't want to do within that expansion that's been approved by the voters.
Yeah, I mean, Senator Hawley has been very clear. He's come out multiple times to talk about how he supports Medicaid and doesn't want Medicaid to be cut. And it's very clear because the people of Missouri were like, hey, we want this. So, is an interesting situation. The people who have come out in support of Medicaid across Congress have been an interesting group, and we will see how far that goes, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot more support in the Senate generally. I mean, that's been my answer to the panic over the $880 billion is, first, that committee has some work to do to try and come up with that number. They've got to reconcile with the Senate. The Senate is not at all interested in Medicaid cuts. A lot of the reason they even got the budget resolution through was that they reassured people that Medicaid was not in there by name. Well, yeah, no program is in there by name. So there's a lot that's going to happen, when the
Oh, he's back. He's back.
We lost you for a minute there, Chris.
Sorry about that.
Well,
I was just saying there's a lot that's going to happen when the House and Senate get together.
Yeah. So what do you think? So I know there's been some talk about the red line, right? Like no changes to FMAP, but then there's been a lot of discussion about how what do you think is actually real here? Like how far do you think they're going to go before they take a different turn and maybe just quote from someone's text today, liquefy the CDC instead?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Clay got in his survey was anything that gets to be too hard and weedy is going to stop. If they get to start pursuing something and it just gets too in the weeds and too much pushback, they're just going to drop it and move on to something else. I mean, there definitely are other areas to explore and other things to think about within the program that are not, those most threatening types of scenarios. I mean, there was a list that was handed out to all of the House GOP about what types of things they would be interested or not interested in from a savings standpoint and from a spending standpoint. And we don't really know what the outcome of that survey was, but plugging in what we heard into those options, there's definitely other options on the table that are going to save $100 billion here and $100 billion there, and they're not the big changes to the program. So they're going to come up well short of the $800 billion would be my guess. They're going to do a few things that are going to trim $200 to $300 billion out of the program over the course of the next decade or so.
What do you think happens to what's kind of the immediate impact that we'll see with Medicaid plans? We've been talking about just states broadly, but what's going to happen to all of them?
We're not expecting a huge impact on the Medicaid plans. What they're going to see is a potential reduction in number of members if work requirements get approved in some of these states. If there's any changes to the FMAP on the expansion population, some of the work that's going to be done to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse could potentially reduce the number of people on the rolls. Some of the options that they're looking at that are $100 billion savings have to do with how often we're checking eligibility, and those could be kind of not real savings, but actual reductions in the roles for the plans, and so they're going to see fewer people, which means fewer dollars in revenue for them. So I think overall, the money that's going to come out of the program is going to hit the plans, to a degree, but it's going to be more in the per member per month. We've seen our reduction in roles, and that could cause some more M&A and community plans going up, belly up potentially, and the big nationals taking a hit. I mean, I think I saw Molina and Centene in particular took a significant hit in their stock prices this week because of how heavily they're invested in Medicaid and the $880 billion and how that was covered.
Yeah. What do you think about the impact on community plans? I know when Clay was on the show last year sometime, there was one of his things was like community plan, like it's all the big nationals. Like there are very few community plans left, and that's going to be bad for America. What do you think broadly about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's still something that we're very invested in ourselves and trying to help community plans stay alive. I think that's our understanding and belief is that we don't want to see 5 companies running the entire Medicaid program nationwide. Now, there are some states that'll block that, just by the way their program is structured. Texas, Oregon, Colorado, California, New York have certain things already in place that are protecting community plans, but those things are also under threat. Particularly in Texas, there was a push to get rid of the protection for the community plans there. So, it's still very much up in the air, and there also are efforts like Ryzen to, where Kaiser and Geisinger came together and, are trying to figure out, and now have brought Cone Health in from North Carolina, and they're looking for other health systems as well to bring into other pay providers. So that those kinds of partnerships, SCAN and Care Oregon tried to do something similar and got blocked on the regulatory side. So I think we'll see more of those kinds of things and partnerships with other health plans, and some of it may end up being with CareSource has done some things with community plans that is that a big national, is that a community plan? They've got some partnerships that are a little hybrid, that we may see more of those kinds of things as well, where I think community plans will stay alive, but they'll continue to become a shrinking part of the market as the dollars are reduced. I certainly don't see potential for growth of community plans in a spot where the overall Medicaid revenue is coming down and the number of covered lives is coming down around the country.
That's such a bummer because, and I would have to think that this administration would be interested in, things that more like empower local communities. I would really hope, and I know that, lots of people make money off Medicaid, certainly. But I would just really hope that there would be more nonprofit community connected plans that are really working to, be part of the local communities. I think it'd be such a waste and such a loss if that, if there was further attrition there. Because again, like the difference in Medicaid in different states is that, well, people are different in different states and states are different and the healthcare community is different. People's needs are different. And that's why it might be less well suited for a big, national for-profit potentially, although there, I realize when we talk about nonprofit and for-profit and healthcare, it gets a little fuzzy, but I just like the idea of the local connected to the community plans being active there.
Yeah. And there certainly are, places where they're given more advantage than in other places because that benefit is recognized, and procurement, it's another one of those areas, just like health IT. Procurement for managed care is not what you would ideally want in terms of actually getting the performance and getting the types of plans that you really want in place. There's going to have to be some changes to how states procure those plans if that's what they really want to see happen. Otherwise, it's going to be whoever writes the best proposals, and that's always going to be those with the most resources.
Right. What do you think? Some of the scuttle that we've been hearing over the past couple of weeks is just about states. Like I think you mentioned it. Like, could the administration punish a state with hey, we don't like your waiver anymore, or whatever it might be, because they're not complying with certain things, or just causing a ruckus? Do you think that is a real risk? Because some of our state friends have said, like, we expect to just get creamed because we're not being nice.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a risk. I think some people may be overblowing the risk a little bit because there are folks that are coming in that have come in within CMS who are very knowledgeable about the program and how things are structured and what waivers are supposed to be and believe in those waivers, use those waivers when they were in state agencies or those kinds of things. So I think there is going to be, push and pull about whether you do it, but ultimately, if a secretary or an undersecretary or the president or someone close to the president decides that they want to use the health funding to somehow punish a state, that would be a way to do it.
Yeah. And is it true that some of the states that have taken advantage of the postpartum extension, that's all getting wiped out? Is that true?
That I hadn't heard. I'd be surprised because that's been so popular across the board. But I hadn't heard that particular one.
Well, yeah, and we can't get abortions anymore, so it's probably good to take care of babies and moms.
Be good to take care of babies and moms for a while after
not paid for with federal funding for a very, very long time. But yes, we should definitely, if we're going to spend money, spend it on taking care of babies and moms. Postpartum. Need at least a year, ideally forever. But like seriously, if you want babies to get a good start in life, you want moms to be healthy to take care of them, they need healthcare coverage. Medicaid is great.
Yeah.
That's my personal advocacy before anyone thinks anything else. I love Medicaid. Not as much as MSN Doe, but I do love Medicaid.
We both love Medicaid a whole lot. So Chris, we got a few more minutes here. What's we just pummeled you with a bunch of questions that we're trying to validate because of all the, random, honestly, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram chats that we're on, unverifiable information. So, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about?
This is what we're thinking about right now. It's definitely, what is the administration's direction going to look like? What are states going to do in response to that? So that's the piece I keep coming back to that I don't think people are talking about enough is there will be a state response and, different states will respond in different ways. And part of the reason that even during periods, hey, Kevin, part of the reason that we saw even during periods where there wasn't a lot of talk around the how federal investment was happening with Medicaid, but somehow spending kept going up and the roles kept getting bigger was states were taking actions to add people to their roles and to give more Medicaid coverage to people in their states. So there can still be a response from states that have those capabilities where the program looks different, but it's still very very robust and provides the supports that are needed throughout the states. And the other thing that we are trying to use this opportunity to bring up is that if you are going to shift focus and you are going to think about who Medicaid is really for, let's look at the waiting list because there are services that are desperately needed that people have been waiting for forever and are entitled to and qualify for and all those things, but the money's just not been put there. So if you're going to think about who should be covered or not covered and what that looks like and work requirements and those kinds of things, then let's also think about reinvesting and ensuring that those who already qualify for services already, need those services, don't sit on waiting lists forever to access those services. And so there's an opportunity to say, yes, savings, but if you're going to save, let's also reinvest that money in services still in the program that are there and people should be getting and aren't getting.
Yeah, like adult dental and childhood dental, but there's so many things that are how do we determine the outcome of the program, right? Quality care and comprehensive care does sometimes cost a little more upfront, but I'm certain that investing in preventative care has dramatic health impacts and societal impacts and economic impacts. And, if anyone should be able to look at a different time horizon, it should be the federal government and state governments, right? I understand that businesses have to think about what is the ROI of this action in this time frame that we have determined is actuarially correct for us, right? Like in our system, people go in and out of healthcare programs, in and out of insurance programs. But if anybody can think about what is the benefit to society for better health and like better outcomes and a more stable society, more economic growth, more stability, less violence, it's got to be the states and the feds. I mean, who else can think of that?
Yeah.
Only them.
Well, and the other thing along the same lines is the whole issue of ghost networks. We're still dealing with, Clay was told at one point, and it's still true by a Medicaid director, that all a Medicaid card is a license to hunt, because you've got to go find a provider who will actually take it. So, the idea of do we actually have the networks that we say we have? We have a directory. We have a directory that lists all these people, but if I call any of them, I can't actually get an appointment. And when we actually do the work to test that and, call and try and get appointments, we can't get them. And so do we actually have care just because we have coverage? No, particularly not in Medicaid. And how do we work on, those issues around what is a real network? And just because you got somebody to sign a contract and they've never billed for a Medicaid member, are they actually providing, should they actually be listed anywhere as providing services if you go and pull their claims data and they've never submitted a claim on a Medicaid member in the history of their contract? So
Right.
There are definitely things we can do to improve the program while dealing with some of these issues and challenges around, we want to see us spend less money on it. Or some folks want to see less money.
I feel like that's like the theme of today, and the theme of like everything around Doge is like, we agree that there are tons of improvements to make, and there are lots of people like the three of us plus Clay and many others who are like, hey, we got some ideas, like let's talk about it. But they need to be maintained because they're providing really important services for people. But like, sure, like, let's take a careful look. We have some ideas.
But I love that coverage does not equal access.
Yeah. Right.
And certainly does not equal good care at the end of the day. So awesome. So Chris, hey, thank you for joining us. We are out of time. What is one last thing you would like to tell our 5 to 6 loyal fans?
Just that we think you all are awesome too, and really appreciate the opportunity to join, and look forward to Clay getting a chance to join up with you as well. Glad to see all the comments and engagement. I know people are concerned and have are nervous about what's going on and happening, and rightfully so. But just I agree 100% with check your sources, check your facts, check the motivation of why something may be put out there from a messaging standpoint. That you need to understand some of these issues at a more detailed level, that more than just the headlines and even some of the commentary that comes along with it. There's a lot to
be
consume.
Like Lisa. Don't just read the headlines like me, y'all.
Don't just read the headlines.
Don't be like
the
that.
Full article. Yeah, don't be like me. Be like Lisa. All right, Chris, thank you so much. And
thank you both.
We will see you at our HIMSS live show on Tuesday, 2 of them, and then we will see you on Friday. So much Health Tech Talk Show next week.
That's right. My gosh. We will not see them on Friday. Friday is canceled. We are busy that day. Remember? Next Friday.
Oh yeah. We're going to South by Southwest, and we're speaking
That's right.
about public health. So we're not, so anyway, It's fine.
We'll see you all soon. Check out Mostly Medicaid. Chris and Clay are
great.
The best. They're the best. Thank you, Chris.
We legitimately love them, and they're the best. See y'all.
Right. Bye.
Maybe.